Welcome back to the PCC podcast. And in today's episode, we are going to be talking about hyper independent women. So if you clicked on this, you probably identify as a hyper independent woman. And we're going to talk about the downfall of trying on your own when you are hyper independent in your fitness journey. And this was inspired by a client who actually just came back to PCC after about a 2-year break. And she had learned a lot of tools from working with us. And she is super, super independent. She is the breadwinner of her family. She is known for being reliable and getting it all done. But she realized that she needed some help. And I'm going to walk you through what that actually looks like over time and how you can see yourself in someone like her's shoes and recognize that getting help is not always a weakness. So really the biggest thing that we're going to learn in this episode today is that the longer you try to solve your fat loss problem on your own, the harder it actually gets. And I know that that sounds really backwards because most of you listening are the type of woman who figures things out. Personally, even within our work culture and just my personal life, we have a saying called FITFO. FITFO. We say it all the time, and it means figure it the F out, which is kind of like, okay, if I don't know how to do something, I'm going to just try to FITFO first, and then I'm going to ask for help. And that's what a lot of you guys probably do, right? You're capable, you're driven, you're independent, and you probably have been praised for that a lot of your life. And FITFOing it is probably your philosophy, right? And you probably don't like asking for help. And you've probably been the reliable one your entire life. So when it comes to your body, it's really natural that you would treat it the same way, right? A lot of women tend to think, especially in this kind of arena, that struggling alone is strength. And so I want you guys to understand what is the actual cycle that's happening here and what are the potential dangers or things to be cautious of, because being hyper independent is absolutely something that society has praised for probably recent years when it comes to women making their own money, women having their own careers, women being able to just kind of do it all, right? But I think the thing that people don't realize, or I think people are starting to realize, is that the expectation of like basically superwoman is a little bit heavy on a woman who is naturally biologically inclined to be a nurturer, a caretaker. And so it's already kind of wired in us to take care of others. And so when we're trying to do it all, what tends to happen is we put ourselves last, right? And so this is what can happen when we try to do it alone and we stay possibly too hyper independent for our own good. And so here's how that tends to look. Step one, you go about your health and fitness journey alone. So this probably looks like using ChatGPT to come up with a workout plan, a meal plan, recipes. I know before ChatGPT was a thing, Pinterest was huge for saving healthy recipes and meal prep ideas. What else? MyFitnessPal, of course, having that set numbers for you, or even like small bits of help that aren't actually, people helping you, like Noom or calorie trackers or things like that. And going to the gym, right? Some women tend to, go to the gym alone. Some of them will join a group class, but they're not actually like having one-on-one support in their training, right? And when you're going about it on your own, the thing is like, a lot of the type of people that we work with, especially the client that like made me think of this entire episode, is that you're not bad at any of this stuff. It's like when life is calm, you can pretty much like check the boxes, make some progress, and like feel like you're getting somewhere. And that's kind of the sneaky, tricky part of this loop is like, you don't obviously or blatantly see that you're just like falling flat on your face and failing. Like you're actually taking some strides in the right direction. So this client in particular, when she was going about it on her own, we actually kind of kept in touch through the time period that she was no longer with PCC, in between the time that she first signed up and the return. And she would get momentum going with things like emotional eating, setting habits like getting her workouts in more regularly, prioritizing something over nothing, and eating healthier, making some healthier decisions. And so it felt like she was progressing, But the thing that kept on happening was the needle wasn't moving, right? And so the delusion that she was kind of under was that if I just keep going on my own, I will eventually figure it out. But what kept happening, and this is step 2, life gets busy and stressful. And this client in particular is a mom of multiple kids. Again, the breadwinner of the house, her husband is a stay-at-home husband. And when life would get busy or stressful, she would fall off. And not in like, again, not in a blatantly obvious screw it, fall on your face way. Just a like, I silently kind of let go of some of the harder things to do. So like instead of getting 3 workouts in a week, maybe she would just get 1. Or instead of like tracking all of her food and knowing what's going into her body, she was just eating healthy, but not really having any data to work off of, right? Little details like that. And so you fall off, right? But not in an obvious way, a kind of sneaky way where like the bigger priorities just kind of get muted. And that's where progress really stops. And so you stall out, you're not seeing progress. You might take a couple steps backwards. You might just stay in the same spot. But at the end of the day, some time will pass and you realize I haven't gotten anywhere, right? I haven't actually moved the needle on my goal. And then we blame ourselves like, oh, well, it must be something wrong with my body, my metabolism. Maybe I'm getting old. Maybe I don't know what I'm doing. Maybe I don't have enough willpower. Maybe, maybe something is wrong with me. And that's where the narrative starts, is maybe something is wrong with me. And for high achievers, it's typically like, what's wrong with my discipline? What's wrong with my motivation? What's wrong with my willpower? And the narrative that starts to develop is, I just need to be more committed. And that's where we start to trust ourselves less, right? At the end of the day, what creates self-trust is following through on what you say you're going to do, reinforcing that, and then also seeing the results of following through is what builds the trust of like, oh, when I do something, then it actually affects the results that I have. And that's called self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is the belief that your actions have an impact. And when you start to go through this cycle where you're putting in the actions, but they're not directed towards results, what happens is you trust yourself less and your self-efficacy slowly shrinks and erodes. And from there, when we have less of a belief that our actions matter and that when we do something, we will see results, we start to retreat and kind of pull back our goals. So what that can look like is the common example that I use is you had a goal of losing 30 pounds and being able to run a 5K in under 30 minutes. And that was 3 years ago. As you continued to kind of just go about on it on your own, not really lose weight, fluctuate between the same 5 to 10 pounds, that goal became, well, I'd still be happy with 20 pounds. And just being able to finish a 5K would be awesome. And then you continue to spin your wheels, trust yourself less, have less self-efficacy or belief that you can actually get there. And then you shrink the goal to something like, I just 10 pounds or even just fitting better in my pants would be enough for me. And, I just want to be able to like run a mile without stopping. And we shrink and we shrink and we shrink because we don't believe that we can actually get there, when the thing that never changed was your capability. Your ability to get there has never actually shrunk. It's just your belief. And so every time you go through this cycle, whether that's on a week by week basis, a month by month basis, a year by year basis, starting over and stopping and starting over and stopping, whether it's blatantly obvious with screw it on the weekends, I'm just going to eat whatever I want. Or if it's quiet, like the client that I'm describing that came back to us, over time, she recognized that doing it on her own was no longer a strength. It was actually something that was making her weaker and smaller over time. And that's why your goals keep getting smaller. It's not because you're actually incapable. It's because you have conditioned yourself to expect failure because you have been going out about it on your own. And so this isn't a problem with what you're eating. This isn't a problem with your workouts. It's a trust problem with yourself. And that trust wasn't lost overnight. It was chipped away every single time you tried to do this alone without the right support. And so really, when it comes to clients that work with us, the ones that have really been the most successful that have come to us recently are women that they are taking action and they are trying. They're doing a lot of the right things, but all of those things are not directed towards results. they're aimless, and they're just the person's doing their best in a very stressful life, in overwhelm, in trying to hold it all together on her own. And when you finally realize that doing it with support is actually a strength, is actually delegation, and recognizing that you can get to where you want to be much faster and farther when you decide that you're not going to shoulder the entire burden on your own, that you don't get a medal for that. You don't get a prize for that. You just get burnt out. And so the client who came back to us, she's already taking better and more action towards her results. She's already starting to feel better and more relieved because this is one less thing on her plate rather than one more thing on her plate. And we were able to take away the decision fatigue that she felt on a day-to-day basis. The am I doing enough? Is this going to get me results? And just constantly ruminating and thinking about that. I think what a lot of hyper independent women don't realize about hiring support is that they think, oh, well, it's just another thing I have to do, another box I have to check, another person I have to report to, and it feels like a burden. When in reality, you're already spending so much mental energy on the second guessing, on not being certain in what you're doing. And when you delegate it to a party that you trust, you actually have far less decision fatigue in this area, and it can clear you up to focus on other things. And that's actually another piece that creates consistency, because mental overwhelm, overload, decision fatigue is another reason why our brains kind of retreat to that path of least resistance and shrink back. And so I want you guys to remember, you've been taught that doing it alone means you're strong. But what if doing it alone is actually what's keeping you stuck? Independence is not the ability to do everything alone. It's the ability to get yourself what you need. And so you don't need more discipline. You don't need to try harder. You don't need to be more committed. You need structure, support, guidance, and perspective in order to actually drive your efforts in the right direction so that you're not wasting time, energy, and eroding your self-belief over time. So if you've been stuck in this cycle for months and years, the big question that I want you guys asking yourself is, what's going to make the next time actually different on your own, right? I was going great and then I got sick and now I'm starting over and I feel like it's going to be different this time. Or I started that over and then life got busy and hectic and I'm starting over again. And I feel like it's going to be different this time. Hyper independent women tend to delude themselves over and over and over again that they have it in them, they can make it happen. And like, that's true. Like, it's not the fact that you can't, it's the fact that is it the smartest path, right? And so this isn't about hiring a coach. This is about deciding you're done doing this alone, because the strongest thing that you can do is not proving that you can do it alone. It's putting yourself in a position where you actually succeed. So if you are a hyper independent woman and you have prided yourself on doing things alone, I hope that this episode has given you a new perspective that strengthens you and empowers you rather than breaks you down over time with the cycle that you've been in. With all that being said, thank you so much for listening and for your attention. I appreciate that, as I know that attention is the most valuable resource that you can give nowadays. And we'll see you back here next week for the next episode.